Hello, and welcome to the Related to Geeks podcast, the podcast about a geeky family. This is episode 3, original air date Thursday, September 3rd, 2015. My name is Megan, the youngest of the siblings, and your host. And with us tonight is my brother Kier.
Hello.
My sister Sarah.
Hello.
And our dad, aka Harry Larry, aka Dabaw, aka Robot Dad.
Yola.
Yola. So to explain the format of this particular podcast, we will start off with what's caused us to geek out lately, then we'll get into our topic of the week, and finally wrap things up with our picks of the week. So now that mouthful is over, let's get right into it with Sarah. What's caused you to geek out lately?
So we've been kind of talking about astronomy as being one of our subjects that we're learning about this year, and we kind of watched some of the meteor shower. We didn't get great views of it, I think, just because our house faces the wrong way. But we did see a few meteors fall, and that spawned some new interest again. So Liz and I have been watching Crash Course Astronomy just as a fun little thing to do during our homeschool days, and we've checked some books out of the library. We went to Half Price Books when we were in St. Louis a couple of weeks ago and bought some astronomy books there too. So she's studying that, and we're planning on going to a stargazing party in St. Louis this coming up weekend. So I'm excited about that to see how that is. And maybe in a couple of weeks is I think it's the International Observe the Moon, something along those lines, and there's something going on down in Arkansas for that we might try to go to. So we're having fun just learning about everything that I used to be really interested in when I was probably Liz's age, and haven't really been exploring much lately. So having fun rediscovering that.
Yeah, I'm excited to get out there again and do more stargazing and all of that. But I have to wait for later in the year because right now I'd just be carried off by mosquitoes.
Yeah,
that's
well,
not fun.
That's why you should come up here and visit us, because we don't have mosquitoes and we have very little light pollution. So bring your telescope up and we'll go look at some stars.
I got a new telescope.
Yeah,
Cool.
I heard that there was a telescope that you had and a telescope that I had, and that we should both take our telescopes to Sarah's house, where apparently the mosquito population is not in the bajillions.
It's not. It's actually really nice outside in the evening. We're talking about buying a telescope, but it's not something we're rushing into. We want to make sure that we get the best bang for the buck we can. We might buy something really inexpensive just to be able to look at like the moon and some of the planets as a starting off point, just because the interest is there right now. So if I can just get that telescope out so that we can look, I think that could go a long way.
Yeah, if nothing else, it'll give Liz some scope of just how much is out there that you can't see with the naked eye. Because even when in low, light pollution areas, you just put even like a low power telescope out there and look through it, and you'll see so much more.
Right. And we had a telescope a few years ago, but it was right before we moved to Chicago about 5 or 6 years ago. We're not there anymore, but we moved there about 5 or 6 years ago. And we had a telescope before we moved there, but we gave it to our neighbor because we knew that telescope wasn't going to be really powerful enough to see much. So, and he was excited about just being able to go out into his backyard and what he could see. And you could kind of, with that telescope, see like the rings of Saturn and obviously more detail in the moon. It wasn't a great telescope or anything, but Liz remembers nothing of this, even though obviously she looked through it and had a great time, but she was 6 or 7 at the time. So she doesn't remember any of it. So I would like to get her back behind the lens of a scope.
Well, my vote is that we all get together over at Sarah's house. Dad and Megan brings telescopes. I'll bring Wendy. And then, like a good 9 years from now, I will reminisce over the fact that Wendy enjoyed looking at a telescope and remembers nothing and be thinking about getting a telescope.
There you go.
Sounds like a plan. All right, Kier, what has caused you to geek out lately?
I have been in a plethora of geek mode. I have been geeking out over so many different things these last couple of weeks. The biggest thing, though, is probably the Warmachine League that I am in the process of trying to wrap up plans for and get underway. And we're going to meet every other week at our local campus library. And we've got at least 10 people signed up already. And we're doing what's called a slow grow league, where you start off with a very small, I wouldn't even call it an army. It's a battle group or whatever you would call it in Warmachine. So you got one guy and his two giant robots or giant beasts, and then you slowly grow it up into, a few units and maybe some more beasts and some solos and some mercenaries and things of that nature. And it's really cool, and I'm really excited. If you haven't checked it out, you should check out Warmachine.
Yeah, we all three play, obviously. We've talked about it before, I think. And that's been something else I've been doing, is trying to figure out which army I'm going to play in this slow grow league. So, because I keep flip-flopping between. There's a lot. There's 12, I think, different armies you can choose from. And I'm notorious for not being able to make up my mind. The last one that I did mercenaries, which is, some people will tell you, not even really a faction. But because they're often used to help other armies and stuff. And so there's part of me that just wants to stick with mercenaries and do a different caster, but then there's other factions to try out. So trying to figure that out.
I, for one, am playing Signar, aka mercenaries.
There is that.
Signar, not known for their standalone in-faction models, but man, they can take just about any mercenary model out there, and they do. So anyway, for this league, one of the things that I'm doing is there's a website out there called Outfab, and with it, you can basically send them a piece of vector art, and they will laser cut you plastic, wood, or I think maybe even metallic, whatever your design is. They'll laser cut it out for you. So I'm making some custom badges. So as you grow in the league, you get these badges periodically for participating or painting miniatures or making terrain or playing games on a clock or, winning or losing games. It doesn't matter. So you get more points as you play, and the more points you get, the more of these badges you unlock. And you can unlock the whole set if you play from the beginning of the league all the way to the end. And then at the end, there are 3 special badges for people who have, done the most for the hobby side of things, or done the most points in playing and winning games, or the most of a combination of the two.
So it's the Boy Scouts of Warmachines?
It is very much that. In fact, we played earlier this year / late last year, and we did we actually had like the embroidered patches that you got as part of this. So I can't do that because embroidered patches are oddly very expensive, and the Outfab laser cut brass finish kind of acrylic is fairly cheap comparatively.
And the other thing is that almost everybody that's going to be playing already has those embroidered patches, because most of the people have done Journeyman before, so it'll give them something different too. Yeah.
So I've been using Inkscape, which is one of my favorite vector graphics programs. That's completely free, and I highly recommend it. And I have been making extremely precise images for the badges to be laser cut out of. using as a guide.
I can't wait to see them.
All right. Dad, what's caused you to geek out lately?
Well, first I want to give a short report on my backup system. I'd had it in place, like less than a week, and I had a 1.5 TB drive die on one of my main productions. And so I just copied the appropriate tree over to it, and like 2 hours later, I had it installed, and all my data was back. It was so wonderful. So that's the recovery portion of the backup, the most important part.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was very pleased. But as far as what I'm really geeking out on lately, it's all been music. Let's see, a week ago Saturday, I played at the farmer's market. I played jazz piano, and then last Saturday I went to McGregor Fest and did a short set, a benefit for Dan McGregor, who I play music with at Memphis. And next Saturday, Peoria, Illinois, and the Illinois Blues Fest. 3 weeks of Blues Fest here in Jonesboro. So I'm totally wrapped up in the music, back in school and doing music composition and jazz improv.
Very cool. I saw that about the Illinois Blues Fest. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, and Vivian's going to get to visit some relatives that she hasn't seen since she was a teenager.
Yeah, I heard that. I think that's awesome.
Are you going to play at the Illinois one, or are you just going to listen?
No, I'm going to play, and I'm giving a couple workshops, too.
Oh, cool.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. It's one of those deals where it's almost going to cover the transportation, the playing recompense will almost cover the transportation there and back. But that includes your mom's transportation, so that's great,
Yeah. Some of my fondest memories were going to the Blues Fest with you and going to the campgrounds and drawing all of the musicians as they were playing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fun.
Do you still have those pictures, or did I take those?
I still have them. I have some of them anyway. I am not sure which memorabilia box they're in, but I've still got them.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too.
I remember the year that it... Oh, which one was it? Was it the Helena one that it rained, and it was just a giant mud pit?
Yep, I remember. The giant mud pit.
I remember there was a guy, I cannot remember his name, but he was the mayor of the campground, self-proclaimed.
Yeah, Mayor Mike.
Yeah.
Still good friends with him.
Yep, and I remember I was joking with him. I said, "Is there anything you can do about this rain?" And he just looked to the heavens and he shouted, "Rain! You call this rain?" And at which point the sky just opened up and rain poured down. And I was like, that is not what I had in mind.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. For a second, he had magic powers.
It wasn't just mud, it was Mississippi mud. Because, all the undercarriage of the cars got covered in it, mine included. And 1 year later, I was going back to Helena, and I had to change the tire, and there was still big gobs. A year later, still big gobs of that mud on the car.
Yeah, the other thing I remember about that year is there was essentially 3 classifications of how hardcore you were about that festival. The normal people would pay people to tow them out of the mud pit because they had had enough and they were going to go home. The hardcore people just stuck it out, stayed in the mud, and camped and did the entire festival. And then there were super hardcore people who were actually paying people to tow them into the campground in 8-inch deep mud so they could join the party.
Wow. I guess it's your turn, Megan.
Yeah, someone should ask me a question.
What have you been geeking out about lately, Megan?
I have been exploring web development, more specifically blog development. I am looking into launching a new blog that's called Megantopia, the sort of lifestyle blog, because I enjoy a lot of DIYs, crafting, cooking, organizing, all of that stuff. But I'm only kind of sort of good at it. You know, I'm pretty organized. I kind of know how to cook and stuff like that. So it makes it not as professional, which is nice for me because I don't want anybody to believe that I actually know what I'm doing when it comes to this stuff. But just been taking time exploring that, writing stuff for that, and spending probably more time on Pinterest than anybody ever should. But that comes with the territory, I'm sure.
I've been doing that for years. Pinterest is I mean, I actually do some of the stuff that I pin. So, I mean, I think I'm a leg up on some people. But I can get lost in that site. Lots of cool ideas.
Yeah, I'm compiling lists of things. I kind of want to incorporate some kind of video aspect through YouTube to where I can do, like, you know, kind of like a Pinterest fails kind of thing where I just try things on Pinterest, and most likely I'm going to fail at them because a lot of things on Pinterest aren't really as, you know, effective as they might appear in the pictures that you see. So gonna have some fun with it and do some different things, but that will be launching hopefully in the next couple of weeks, and I'll do a shameless self-plug when that happens. But right now I'm still just kind of in the thick of making sure I've got all my ducks in a row before I do anything with it.
What are you using as far as your website go? Are you using Tumblr or are you
using WordPress?
Yeah, I like WordPress.
I am a fan.
I've been doing a lot of WordPress stuff at work lately.
That's what I blog in when I blog. I blog for other people, not for myself. But that's what I use is WordPress. It's pretty intuitive.
I use Tumblr, but I also have WordPress, Something Blues on WordPress. At McGregor Fest, I ran 2 video cameras all day. I guess there were 7 or 8 acts. And they were Don's cameras, but I ran them all day and 4 audio microphones. And we'll see when we get around to doing any posts how that come out.
Yeah, I got to get back into figuring out how to work cameras and do video editing and figure all that out on my current setup, because it's been a while since I've actually done any recording, video recording, so gonna be a learning curve on that. Probably gonna start with just the article writing and the blog posts themselves, because that's, you know, what I do every day at work as a journalist is write articles, so that should come pretty naturally.
So that's kind of funny because I'm actually thinking about starting to get into video. I've been doing, you know, blog posts with pictures and stuff for years and years, and I'm actually looking at probably doing some stuff and putting it up on YouTube, mainly in the crafting, scrapbooking, planner sector, and then maybe some board games too. Liz really likes the idea of playing a board game and just showing the play. I've even figured out now how to rig a top-down camera. I bought a Gorilla Pod and have hung it from our chandelier, and then I can just clip the camera on.
It's a very lightweight camera, people. It's a very lightweight camera.
It is. It is not a DSLR. It is just a Canon power shot. But it does. I mean, I did a test, and the lighting is good there because I have a big window right by the table, and everything was a good distance. I was able to, you know, get up on a chair and zoom in where I wanted it to be. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I've talked to Megan about this, and I think I've talked to Kier about it too, just trying to figure out how to make an overhead shot work. And I had even totally forgot that Gorilla Pods existed, and then we were at Best Buy and saw one. I was like, that might do it. And then I spent another day or two just trying to figure out where I could possibly put it, what I could use to rig it up. And I was like, oh yeah, I have a chandelier above my dining room table. So the only problem with that is that it sometimes takes a little while for it to stop swinging, which is fun. It makes somebody really sick or dizzy or something. But I'm excited to.
It's like the Blair Witch Project of, you know, planning.
So, Project Life or dining room floor, something like that. But yeah, I've just got to be more patient and wait and make sure it stops swinging. But my first video at the beginning, I was like, wow, that's going to be a problem. That is now deleted. It's not going to do anybody any good.
I use a Canon PowerShot for my videos. It works so good.
I really like it. We've had it. It's an older model. We've had it for probably 4 or 5 years, but it does a pretty good job. It's I think for a point and shoot camera, it's a little more advanced than a lot of point and shoot cameras.
Mine's a couple of years old, but it does HD and I like that. So.
Oh yeah. As somebody who spends a lot of time watching YouTube on a large screen TV, I really like it when people shoot in HD.
I usually shoot 1080 and then render to 720. 1920 by 1080 and then render to 720. And that way I can zoom in a little in post without pixelating.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like 720 is also that sweet spot for YouTube. It's where it's crisp, but it still loads pretty well, and
so easy with all the devices now that can get YouTube that you already have attached to your TV. It makes it really easy to be lazy and pretend that you're actually being productive because you're learning something or whatever. It's a nice thing.
Learning things is good.
Yeah. I agree.
I learn a lot of things from YouTube.
all right. Well, I'm thinking that we're pretty much wrapping up this section of the podcast. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with our topic of the week.
You're listening to the Related to Geeks podcast, the podcast of a geeky family hosted on our website, relatedtogeeks.com, and on our YouTube channel.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Our topic of the week for this podcast is Geek Groups. These are kind of those groups that maybe are gaming groups or anime groups, could be just a small role-playing group that you're playing D&D with, but just different groups that we've participated in, maybe led, just a general discussion about those groups in our lives. So, let's open it up.
I have participated in or run just an enormity of groups over my life. I am really, looking back on it, surprised at how many gaming clubs or gaming groups or just, getting together with friends to play RPGs that I have done over the years. I've run online guilds or groups in MMOs. I have done more weekly RPG games than I can count. And I've even been a part of computer clubs or gaming clubs, and I'm currently co-leading a gaming club with Sarah right now called the NEA Gamers Guild. And
it's fabulous.
Huh?
I said it's fabulous.
It is fabulous. I've learned a lot of techniques for keeping your groups together, and even that said, sometimes groups just fall apart and you can't figure out why. And our brother Carl and I have actually had numerous conversations over all of our past role-playing game groups and trying to find the commonalities. What did they have in common that lasted longer than most RPG groups get together for the first 3 weeks and then they just fizzle out. But quite a few of them play for months, if not years, before they finally decide they've run the story all the way to its conclusion. And we've talked back and forth on that pretty extensively. And I think we've even mentioned it at past family get-togethers. But really, what we discovered is that there was surprisingly very little in common. And in fact, I think the most important thing is just having the right players at the right time who are showing up and playing every week. And the biggest piece of advice that I could give people running like a weekly RPG game is rather you have 2 people show up or 6 people show up, just go ahead and run the game. And the reason for that is, and this is definitely the one that every single one of my groups had in common that fell apart, is if you're waiting for the entire group to be there for you to run the game, well, one, people feel like they can skip because they're not going to miss anything. And 2, people start showing up, and at the last minute, 1 or 2 people cancel, and then you're just sitting around either playing other games or just, passing time that evening and not really doing anything. And then after a while, people just don't show up because they don't want to just show up and sit around. They want to play a game. So really, my biggest piece of advice is, if one guy shows up to your house ready to game, then put together a game for him.
I think that's sound.
Well, also snacks.
Yeah,
I was going to say the longest D&D group I've been a part of was with Kier and our other brother, and lots of friends and family and all of that. And we would get together at their house, and they would cook dinner every Friday night. And there's something about going and getting a home cooked meal and playing D&D until 1 o'clock in the morning. It was pretty fun. And it definitely, I think we were pretty much there every weekend. If we were in town, we were there.
In fact, I would say that the people that you're playing with and the snacks that you're eating are probably the most important aspects of a role-playing game get-together. The setting and the game system, that's all, that's just icing.
Well, we would pack. Oh my gosh, there were times we probably packed 15, 16 people in her little trailer living room. We were talking an old single-wide, and we would be packed in there, but we all had the time of our life. It was so much fun.
Yep. Getting into the large scale of things, currently Sarah and I are running the NEA Gamers Guild, and we have been doing that for, I guess about...
Since the beginning of February, so about 7 months. Right at 7 months.
Yep. And we both went out and looked up a bunch of other groups, Sarah more than I, and we reached out to them and contacted them to get advice from them. So I feel like the majority of advice we could give on that front is advice that we got from other people and then also potentially learned a little bit firsthand ourselves. Like one of the pieces of advice that we got was rares are better than commons. If you're getting to where you're having 2 or 3 get-togethers every single week, you're going to find that you have 2 or 3 people at those get-togethers, and that's it. But if you have one, But if you have one big get-together every month, well, you're going to have a pretty good turnout every single month for that because it's going to be another month before you can get together and play a lot of games. So on, kind of inverse from the weekly RPG session, if you've got a big group of gamers, you're really better off getting together once or twice a month rather than once a week.
And the way that we shoot for things right now is about three things a month. It's going to be a little bit more now with the miniature gaming coming in, which is going to be every other week. So that's already twice a month. But we try at least one board game, like board game night. And then we also, I know that Kier talked about this last time, was about the thing that we're doing at the public library, the local public library, which is more geared towards families and bringing people in from the library to play games with us and introducing them to some of the new games that are out there. And that's been pretty fun. I think as far as Geek Groups go, we should go to Dad, though, because he started a very geeky group back in the 80s that I know I was a big part of.
Starting in preschool.
starting in preschool.
And I started to learn the game of chess when I was like 5 or 6 years old. And the guy who ran that was one of those guys who could be helping people and then running a couple other games in his head and call out the moves across the room. So that impressed me very much. And then later on, like around junior high school, I was for the Magic Club. It's really a cool thing, a lot of fun to do, and you learn about how to do presentations, how to present yourself in front of people, plus you learn the tricks, And then later in high school, I was president of our high school chess club. And that was my first experience at really successful group promotion. Because if you were president of a club, you could make a homeroom announcement that would be read in every homeroom. So my announcement was, join chess club and be socially accepted, which always got a good laugh, but also got good attendance.
Join chess club and be socially accepted.
Yes. That just worked great. And then also at the same time, I was in a couple of different astronomy clubs. We were talking about astronomy earlier, and that's a substantial geek presence in astronomy clubs. And we would do newsletters and magazines, which I think is important for any group. Now it's usually internet, and you don't have to put up with the print and the mailing and distribution and all that. But I think email lists are important. And I also think, having a blog or schedule online where things change all the time and people can go check out what's happening new. And then when I was working in Jonesboro, I was president of the Jonesboro User Group, which is a computer club. And we covered games, and we also covered programming and freeware and open source software and just a whole bunch of financial software, just all kinds of different programs. We would have a meeting every month, and we also had a special interest group for SIGs that met, like the C64 SIG or the Atari SIG. And we also even had an Explorer group for a couple years, and we did computer stuff and astronomy stuff, so that was really cool. And Sarah was in that Explorer group, and several of her friends I still see and know today, and they're still doing computers. So that's really pretty weird.
Yeah, and that was fun too. That was definitely a fun time, because I can remember we used to get the big telescopes. I don't know whose telescopes they were, but we'd go out to the field south of the town and just find different things. I can remember being really excited about learning about how to find galaxies outside of ours, and of course, I think I probably learned more in that time during our trips about astronomy than I did every other part of my life.
Yeah, there's something about actually looking and seeing that stuff with your eye, as opposed to looking at Hubble pictures, which are beautiful and really look much better, but it's not the same as looking through a telescope and being awestruck by just thinking about what you're looking at,
Yeah. And I was heavily involved with the Jonesboro User Group as well. I was, especially the Atari group, the Special Interest Group.
And the Explorer group, which was very...
Oh, go ahead.
It was very successful because we would always have pizza.
Yeah. Anytime you wanna get teens involved with something, give them pizza. It's a known fact.
Well,
but I was also.
I think that works with adults too.
Yeah, I was. I led a young adult book discussion group for a while. I worked at a library and worked with the teens, and one of the things we did was we got one of the local pizza places to donate pizza. And by the time I left, I think my first one, we had maybe five or six show up. By the time I left, I think we were at 20 or so kids every month, which was pretty amazing. But and I think, the pizza didn't hurt. I don't know if that's the only reason they came, but I don't think it hurt.
It's the only reason I came.
Well, I know, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, actually, yeah, and I was gonna jump in here a little bit and talk a little bit about groups, that I was involved in, and actually growing up, I didn't have a lot of opportunities for groups like that because I was homeschooled, and Dad had retired a little bit from his group forming business and moved on to other things in his life. But definitely in high school, I participated in a lot of library programs, and that's a great place to get plugged into a lot of things that are definitely of the geeky variety. But I know that we would have game nights, and we had the book discussion group, and obviously summer reading programs and all of that. So that's a wonderful place to get plugged in. And then as soon as I entered college, like within the first week, I had already visited the anime club, and you will never find a group of people that are more open and welcoming and just willing to love you from the first second. I mean, if you're easily overwhelmed, that may not be the best club for you, but if you just want a place where you've got a lot of really enthusiastic people about really all kinds of geek things, because while it was the anime club and we did a lot of focus on anime and discussed anime, there were some people that just enjoyed that environment and enjoyed those people that maybe really didn't watch a lot of anime, but still came, and we talked about other things. So that was a wonderful club to join, for sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there tends to be a lot of overlap among geek clubs. So I gamed with a guy on a weekly basis for the longest time, and neither one of us realized that he was in the anime club with you at the same time.
Yeah.
So we both knew the guy, and then one night you came over to my house to play games, and he was there, and you're like, "Oh, hey!"
After the Jonesboro User Group, I got involved in Blues Fest, our 25th year this year, the Blues Club Inc. This was the major group of my life, and I always called it a disorganization because we were all volunteers and no membership or dues or anything. And but we built the band shell out at the park and donated it to the city, and we're still doing music out there. And Megan was very heavily involved in photography for our shows out there, and Kier and Carl were heavily involved in helping to build the band shell.
Yeah. There was a while there where every weekend, Carl, Dad, and I would go out to Crickhead Forest Park, and we would just work.
And before that, every weekend we'd go out there and play music.
Yep.
I say early on, I'm not.
Sarah was stage manager.
Yeah, I was not a musician in the family, but I would help, move speakers around and make sure people had microphones and help artists up to the stage and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was only for a few years. I unfortunately moved away not too long after it started, but I found a way to be involved anyway.
Even Sister Gretchen helped quite a bit there for a while.
Well, she played for a while, too.
Yes, she did. She played.
Probably at the first year, she was probably still playing drums.
I'm looking at a picture of Harry, Larry, and the Flying Hungarians right now with Gretchen and Kier and Carl and Aldous on the wall.
Those are all siblings, just so you know.
Yep.
We are a rather large family.
I will say that the best geek group I've ever been involved in is this geek group.
I want to talk a little bit about like the accidental geek groups, because I feel like we've all had this occur in our lives where you just. I know there was a situation in college where like Fridays kind of just became the day where a small group of us would get together and play some video games and play some board games, and it started with like 4 or 5 of us, and then gradually, more and more people got invited and, started, coming out, and, there was a period of time where I, still was kind of considered the host. It wasn't at my house, it was at a kind of, public student center on campus, but it was kind of considered, my baby, and it morphed to where we had, 25, 30 people show up to play games on Friday afternoon. They'd get out of their last class on Friday and they'd want to go and just, blow off steam and play games, and we just kind of became the place for it. So I find that those are really fun when you kind of have just those times where you just find a bunch of people that want to do those things together, and it just works out. And it's hard to manufacture those.
That was most of my RPGs I ran in college that lasted longer than a few weeks. They'd start off with 4 people, and the next thing I know, it'd be 3 months later, and I'd have 9 players showing up every week. And I'm going to tell you, 9 players is too many players in an RPG.
Well, we had times where we had like 3 different systems set up, and then 2 or 3, tables playing board games. We had people with their laptops out playing games on their laptops and showing them off on laptops. I mean,
yep, I've been to a couple of those get-togethers. I was done, growed up and graduated by that time, but pop back in to say hello to some old friends and sit down, play some games.
I want to make a leadership comment. A lot of people wonder what it takes to, lead a group and start a group and keep it going. And sometimes I think the most important thing is just be willing to do the work and make the phone calls and send the emails and show up.
Yep. Showing up is a big part of it. If you don't show up, nobody else is going to.
Yep. Showing up is the most important part of it.
Most of our group happens on a Facebook page. Most of the communication, we do have a website, but most of our communication happens on our Facebook page. And if it's been a couple of days or a day and nothing's been posted, I find something and I post it, because I want people to go, oh yeah, this group exists. This group has stuff to add to my gaming experience.
Whether it's a blog or a Facebook page or a website, you got to have churn. If someone's logging on every day, they're not expecting something different every day. But if they're logging on twice a week, you want them to see something new every time they log on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even though I didn't really start that, Friday night game group, thinking I was going to use it as, reaching out to people, I still found myself, every Friday, posting on Facebook real quick, hey, we're getting together to play games, come if you want. And, it was just one of those natural things that, is an easy way to extend the invite to a lot of people. And, in college, you meet new people in class all the time and start adding them on Facebook, and before you know it, they start showing up to those game days. And it doesn't take a tremendous amount of effort, but it is work, You can't just, set something up and then show up and expect everybody else to know what's going on. You actually have to promote it and reach out to people and encourage other people to reach out, because obviously if they're into gaming, then they probably know other people who are into gaming too.
Yep.
Yeah.
And reaching out is really, that was another piece of advice that Sarah and I got, was if you want a bunch of people to show up to your game days, then you got to be proactive and you've got to reach out to them and you've got to say, hey, we're having a get-together. This is the time. This is the place. We'd love to see you there. And reaching out to people is, you can't just say we're doing this every Friday and then never say anything again, because it immediately, people stop hearing about it. They assume that it's not going anymore.
Also, invites are good, but if there's someone that you really want to come that you really think would be good, ask them to help. Ask if they can help you. If they say they can help, they're likely to show up, If invite, it's easy to say, oh, well, I was tired or whatever,
Also, reaching out, I've had at least a couple of people that have joined our group because I've met them out and about while I was, shopping, and I noticed them in the game section, and we started up a conversation about games, and I'm like, hey, we've got this group. Check it out. And I didn't even leave the store and they had joined, at least on one instance, which that makes you feel good. They're like, that's really great that they really are interested in being a part of this.
So does anybody have advice on the opposite side, of not necessarily starting a group or being the leadership role, but how to get plugged into a group like that, where to find them, how to find ones that kind of are the right fit for you, where you need to look for joining those types of groups?
Meetup.com. And unfortunately, we're not on Meetup.com, but it is a great place to look for whatever it is that interests you. And I have used it. I use it for a board game group that we go to in St. Louis sometimes. I used it in Chicago for different things. So that's a really good place. Another one is Facebook. Just look for groups based on your interest. And not only groups in your area, but there's also virtual groups on just about everything you could possibly be interested in. I'm members of scrapbooking groups and planner groups and all of this on Facebook because it's there for me, and I can pick other people's brains and see what they're doing, especially if you live in an area that's kind of remote like I do. Having those kind of virtual groups are good too.
Other good places to check would be at local bookstores. If you've got a local gaming store, that's a great place to look. And at your library. Library is especially good because it's kind of a catch-all. You know, whether you're looking for a computer club or a gaming club or a chess club, odds are they have some ties to the local library, and that's just because that is a good universal meetup place for just about any club of any interest. And, go ask your librarian what clubs are in the area, because odds are they know.
Yeah, and they've got a research desk where they got people, and that's their job to help you find that stuff.
Google is also a good place.
Another way to get involved in groups, we've all invited a lot of people and had 1 out of 10 show up. When you get an invite, follow up on it and go. And maybe that's not going to be the group you want, but you'll meet other people there, and they've got other stuff going on. So it's just a good way to meet people is to, when someone invites you, to take the effort to get off your duff and get out there.
And sometimes that's the hard part, but it's usually I found worth it. I have to push myself sometimes to go be a part of a group. I'm pretty much a homebody, so it's good sometimes to just kind of push yourself to do something that stretches you.
Yeah, and I just want to put it out there too that if you find that group, or if you go and visit that group and you find that it's not the right fit, don't let that discourage you, because while there are groups out there that are kind of selective or don't really necessarily have the most welcoming attitude, that is not the majority. Most groups are formed because they want to meet more people who are interested in whatever subject that is. So you will find a group that really is a comfortable fit for you if you search long enough.
Yeah, and give it more than one time, because it's hard when you're the newcomer in a group and everybody already knows each other. But give it a couple of times, because people start to recognize you. And that's probably going to be, people gravitate towards people they already know, and I think that's just human nature. But it doesn't take long. I've learned, I was part of a homeschool group, and, the first couple of times were a little uncomfortable. I didn't really know anybody, but by the third time, everybody knew me, and it was fine. It just took those first couple of times to get acquainted with everybody. And I think that's probably true of most groups, especially larger groups. Smaller groups are not as much of a problem.
The other thing I would point out is most people who have started these groups they've done it because they want people who have never even heard of the thing their group is about to come and join in and be a part of it. One of the number one deterrents I hear of people going to geek clubs is, I don't really know a whole lot about that subject, and I don't know if I would, really have anything in common to talk to about anyone. And I've heard that from friends and family members, where they're just nervous to go to a gaming club because they're not really that big into gaming. And, if their sum total experience is Monopoly, then how are they going to handle this game club that potentially looks down on that game? And, you can reassure them and say, these are people who are dying to share their interest with people. They want nothing more than to introduce people who have never played any of these games or done any of this stuff with computers or anything. all these new concepts. And the other piece of advice I would give for people looking to join groups is remember that just about every group out there, no matter how welcoming, will typically have a couple of members who are not necessarily the most welcoming, or not necessarily the easiest people to get along with. And going once and meeting those people, you could turn you off to a group, but I would always recommend giving it another shot, because there's a good chance that you just met those people.
Yeah, and I think every group, especially large groups, have those people. And usually, and I'm hopeful for this anyway, that usually for every one of those people, there are quite a few other people there that are not as off-putting and are welcoming. But but yeah, if that's the person you ended up being, playing a game with that night, don't judge the entire group on that person. Give it a second chance. Play a game with a different person and see what that experience is like. It's so weird because I've been a member of a lot of groups. I have led a lot of groups. I have been kind of both in a lot of groups where, I'm not really a leader, but I take on roles.
Well, if you want to be one of the people that's always welcome, at the group where you're going, bring some snacks.
There you go.
Snacks are like the golden rule for
home-baked cookies are the best.
I'll tell you what. We were at a Thursday night game night at the campus library, and a guy showed up late, and he brought brownies, and man, he was everybody's favorite.
Yeah. Kier and I were talking about this today. When you have a group and you do pizza, everybody shows up, they throw in $5, and you can buy a lot of pizza if you have a lot of people throwing in $5, and usually more than everybody will eat, which is kind of so there's plenty of food, and that's a really good way to do it too. If you want food at your gatherings, just take people are more than happy usually to pay $5 a person for pizza.
Pass the hat and make a phone call.
Yep, and it works.
Well, I just think in general we're all pro geek groups and say you should go join one or start one or do a combination of the two.
Yes, I have met some of the best people through geek groups.
The piece of advice I would give is join a geek group before you start a geek group.
Probably.
However, if there's something you're really interested in and there's no geek group, find a few friends and start your own little geek group. There's no reason to.
You can start a group with 3 people. We've shown several instances where that's happened. And, you just got to find those couple of people to start it with. And if it's just those 3 people and you're having fun with it, great. But it could grow into something, much bigger than you expected in a few weeks, a few months,
And eventually dwindle out and die.
Die. It's just the life cycle of geek groups.
All things.
All right. Well, on that very kind of morbid, solemn note, we're going to end our topic of the week and go into our second break.
Follow our links and download the podcast MP3 from our website, relatedtogeeks.com. You can also listen on our YouTube channel.
All right, everybody, welcome back. We're going to go into our picks of the week. These are just some things that we've enjoyed this past week and want to recommend to you. So we're going to start off with Dad.
BoingBoing.net. I've been a fan of BoingBoing for years, and just this last 2 or 3 weeks, I got a link to a comic, and I read it, and it was being promoted on BoingBoing. So I like the author Cory Doctorow, and he's a regular on BoingBoing, and it's a long-term geek blog that covers a lot of serious stuff and a lot of just weird stuff. So if you're into serious or weird stuff, off-the-wall geek stuff, try BoingBoing.net.
Serious and weird. That just makes me think of the Joker.
Seriously weird.
Seriously weird. That's the Joker.
Yeah.
BoingBoing.net.
I actually was drawn into it with a comic that had a jester. And because, of the Harry Larry's Merry Prankster group and my HLMP.info blog, I had to get that jester on my website. So, and then I realized I was there at BoingBoing, and I've been going back.
Very cool, very cool.
You notice how I worked in that plug.
Now. It is.
Shameless self-plugs. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it now. It's definitely seriously weird.
Yeah. Weird stuff.
That's my favorite kind of stuff. Watching a drone with a pistol mounted on it.
Somehow that seems like a bad
for
plan.
the rest of the podcast.
Yep. I'm just going to look at this website.
All right, Kier, pull yourself away.
All right. My pick of the week is a YouTube channel called Lindybeige. I don't know if you guys have heard of this one or not, but this is a guy who is really enthusiastic, especially about medieval combat and how it is portrayed in RPGs and movies. He has some other topics that he covers in his videos, but those are the ones that I have just binge-watched beginning to end, and he talks about how people actually fought in medieval ages, and, it's one of those things where you can't go and look up a video, so there's a whole lot of speculation on how people fought. And I don't know if he's ever said what group he's a part of, but he's obviously a part of some medieval reenactment groups, and he's obviously partaken in some medieval combat himself. He talks about, the number one fumble is not ever really represented in any role-playing game, and that's, I tried to draw my weapon, but it got stuck. He talks about how people actually fought with two weapons, and no, you didn't actually just attack twice as much. You primarily used one weapon to parry and the other weapon to attack. He talks about how units would fight with mixed weapons and, have each other's back, and it's just a really interesting series. And then he goes on to just tear apart Hollywood movies where people are obviously swinging at each other's swords and overly choreographed attacks, or people are dodging out of a way of an attack that was definitely going to miss them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is a very fascinating man.
My favorite in movies is when, the actor starts to dodge the attack before the attack has begun.
Yeah.
My favorite in movies is when you say, "But I am also not left-handed."
That is the best, without a doubt.
But speaking of geek groups, that was the last one. Speaking of geek groups, Society for Creative Anachronism is a great geek group.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one that Kier was pretty heavily involved in for a while, too.
Yeah. I used to love going to the park and watching them hit each other with sticks.
We did that a couple of times. I never hit anybody with a stick or let anybody hit me with a stick, but we would watch. I had a lot of friends that were in that group as well. Speaking of geek crossovers.
Yeah, the other thing that he is very common to point out for Lindybeige is, in most role-playing games, you have these classifications of swords. You have the short sword and the long sword, and the great sword and the bastard sword. And really, if you look at swords in history, there were not these classifications. It was a continuum. It wasn't, here's a 1.5 foot long sword, and that's a short sword, and here's a 3 foot long sword, and therefore it's a long sword. There was every sword length in between and every handle length in between for, each one of those swords. And it was very much, the weapon that guy fought with and got good with, that was the weapon he used.
Now, whenever you told me about this last week, and I showed my husband and daughter, because, that was your theory, is that Liz would get a huge kick out of it. And she did, but my husband stayed up pretty late that night, I think, long after I went to bed, and binge watched Lindybeige.
He is. I think he did one video where he was talking about how he makes his shirts, and he's like,
we watched that today.
Yeah, he's like, now, before I begin, I'd like to point out to my target audience, this is probably not the video you're used to seeing. He says, if you're a member of my target audience, odds are you're male between the ages of 10 and 30 and are really into battle axes.
Which is funny, because none of us in this house fit that profile. I mean, not one of us, and we watched a lot of his videos, including the how he makes his shirts, because and it was just that the amount that you saw on the YouTube was just enough to go, I really wonder what this is about, because there is nothing on what we saw on our TV that said anything about shirts. It just said everything you need to know about. And we're like, I wonder what that is. And then we found out it was shirts, but at that point we were already, so I don't know. He's just pretty entertaining.
Yeah,
I think is what it is. So you'll watch a 20-minute video on how he makes his shirts. I don't know if it was 20 minutes, but we watched the whole thing.
You'll also watch probably 5 10-minute videos on battle axes.
Yes.
So what you're saying,
and we watched all kinds of stuff.
So what you're saying is I should probably not look this guy up right after we're done with the podcast, otherwise I'll be up till 3 in the morning.
It's a possibility.
100% correct.
Okay, so I will be checking him out tomorrow. All right, Sarah, what's your pick of the week?
So my pick of the week is something that I think has probably been around for a while, but I just found out about it today, and I am really super excited to try it. There is a post on Google Plus by a guy named Matt Smith, and he has done.
Doctor?
Yeah, I even left a pause there for you. No, I don't think it's that Matt Smith, but. Anyway, he has created a dungeon screen out of 2 CD cases so that all of your information that you need fits onto something that's like 6 inches tall as opposed to 11 inches tall. And I think it's brilliant because you can kind of join the 2 cases together. You can close them up. He's even got a link to a PDF insert with, I think it's 5th ed information on it. So you could just download it, print it, and get it out and stick it in your own CD cases. I'm really interested in trying it with Dungeon Crawl Classics, which is the game that I like to play. I have it right now. My dungeon screen is landscape, so I'm only 8.5 inches tall, but I'm pretty short. So even that 1.5 inches or so, or a couple of inches that I would gain by using the CD cases, I think could be helpful. And it's still enough to hide die rolls if you want to. And I just like having something out so I can have all that pertinent information. DCC is pretty heavy on tables. So there's a lot of stuff that I like to have without having to flip through even a little booklet that only has that information, just to be able to see it out there. But yeah, I just thought it was pretty cool. I found out about it. I'm going to do a double plug here because I found out about it with John Four's emails. John Four is a guy who publishes a RPG newsletter about mainly how to be a DM and tips and tricks and stuff like that. And it's something that he shared on his newsletter that I got this morning, and I thought it was pretty cool. So I am going to definitely be trying that.
Yeah, I like custom Dungeon Master screens because I find that what you need to reference not only varies from game to game, but also varies from game master to game master. You know, I got the 5th ed official RPG screen that was gifted to me by one of my players on a DM appreciation day. It's really, really nice, but I'm looking at the information referenced on it, and I mean, I just rarely use it. The things that I really need as a DM, like, okay, give me a random name generator because, good Lord, I cannot come up with a name on the fly. You meet your 3rd merchant, and his name is Bob.
That works too, but yeah, I really like having access to something like that. I do have they did a free RPG day. Dungeon Crawl Classics gave away a judge's screen, and our other brother, one of our brothers, picked one up for me because I was not able to get to a game store that day because, like I said, I live in the middle of nowhere. So he picked that up for me, and honestly, I don't know. I haven't played since I got the screen, but I honestly don't know that I would use it because it's a portrait, so it's 11 inches tall, and
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like I don't really want to be like behind the super big screen when I'm DMing. I want to be a part of it. I'm not one of the DMs that wants to be like off, in their own little corner, me against them kind of thing. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of that.
Yeah, it's
Short
certainly.
DM screens for the win.
Yeah,
So,
certainly.
and I just thought it was kind of cool, the CD cases, and it's something that a lot of people have them laying around their house because, there was something that people had, and you don't even necessarily need them anymore, so they're just taking up space.
So this is brought to my mind an idea for a CD case where you have your character sheet on your 5x5 cutout, and you can use dry erase markers on the outside of the case to update your character sheet.
Yeah, a lot of people use page protectors for that. That's that's a possibility. Have a little compact character sheet.
The Warhammer World of Warcraft collectibles card game had these great little cases. I ended up getting my hands on a bunch of them. But essentially, they are big enough to hold kind of like a folded in half character sheet, a pencil, a deck of cards, some dice, a miniature, and it originally held just a couple of decks of cards, a pencil, and some rules. But it can be converted to hold your character sheet, pencil, dice, miniature, some reference cards, and you fold up the little box, and you got your little character in a box. And I was intrigued by that concept. I've yet to actually do anything with them, but I've got a closet full of them.
The possibility is there. I've got a closet full of possibilities. That's an issue I have.
That's a great name for a blog.
Closet full of possibilities. That is an awesome name.
A designer that works at one of the stores that I create for, she described it in a podcast that she used to do as her closet full of broken dreams, her craft closet that just of broken dreams, because she would try stuff and it didn't take. I've just got this closet full of stuff I want to do in the future.
Yeah, she had the pessimistic view. We're optimistic here on this podcast. Possibilities.
Much better. So
I probably have a few broken dreams in mine too, though. So I'm not gonna try to pretend I don't.
So Megan, what have you been geeking? What's your pick of the week?
You're so good.
You've been geeking of the week. Can you pick a geek this week?
My pick of the week is bullet journaling. And bullet journaling.
I love bullet journaling.
It's awesome. It's a great system. It's basically just an all-in-one to-do list, planning, brain dump system that you can use, and you can make it as simplistic or as complicated as you want. You can do it in any notebook that you have lying around, and it's just basically you develop a system of bullets that work for you. A very common one is to just do like a box for tasks, and as you complete the tasks you check them off, and then you can do like a dot for like thoughts or maybe an event that's coming up that you just got to remember, and you can separate it by the day so you can have your list for that day, and then the next day anything that you didn't accomplish the day before you move to the new day. And it also keeps you, in a headspace to where you're like, I don't want my list to get so long, so I actually have to get to where I actually check some of this off so it won't move to the next day, because you're constantly having to rewrite those lists, and you're constantly aware, it's like, oh, I've taken this long to do this thing, so either it's just not a priority and I need to scratch it off and not worry about it, or I need to just get it done and, check it off and not have to keep I think they call it, what do they call it? Something weird. But basically, you're moving it. They call it
migration.
Yeah, migration. They call it migration, but I call it moving it because I like simple words. But it's a whole system that this guy set up. I think the actual website is something along the lines of bulletjournaling.com. Dad will have the link posted somewhere because I'll send it to him. But it is It's a really neat system.
What were you recommending to me earlier today, Sarah?
I was recommending a system called Autofocus.
Autofocus.
And I have
because it sounds a lot similar.
Well, it just depends. I mean, it depends on what it is that you're looking for. I would recommend looking at the videos for both of them. Both Ryder Strong, who did the bullet journal system, and Mark Forster, who did the autofocus system, have really good videos showcasing how they work. And I actually kind of use both of them together in ways.
I have the system I use. I just do whatever I want whenever I want to do it.
Yeah.
That's the benefits to being retired.
So I use bullet journaling more for things that I have to do, or things that are, I guess, mostly things that I have to do. And I basically use both of them as task lists. I use autofocus more for projects that I want to work on, or that I want to work towards a goal. And I haven't been using autofocus much at all lately, but I did a while back. Like, it was just a way, like, if I was wanting to work on, say, a Project Life album, I would kind of write down the things that I needed to do, because there was no deadline on those. Autofocus, well, neither one are really great for deadlines, but autofocus is really poor for deadlines, because the idea with autofocus is that you can work on a task, cross it off, and then move it to the end of your list. So you get to cross it off even if you don't finish it, which is kind of a motivator for some people, me included. I like crossing things off. And if I can work on something for 15 minutes and cross it off and move it to the end of the list, I get more satisfaction than working on something for 15 minutes and it just sitting there still looming.
Another system that's really interesting, and I've been toying around with a little bit, trying to figure out ways to implement it, is the, I believe it's pronounced Kanban System, Kanban. But it is it's used a lot for groups of developers to kind of just know what tasks have been completed and what tasks are being worked on. But it's a 3-stage process where you have your stuff that has to be done, your stuff that's in progress, and the stuff that's been completed. So it works well for groups because they can see what's being worked on and who's working on it, and know, okay, when that thing's done, then I can move on and do this other thing. But the way that the system really works nicely for, and I'm planning on kind of using this system for when I start blogging, is you're limited to how many you can have in the in progress section. So that prevents you from just starting and doing the first 15 minutes of every task and never actually completing anything.
But that's what I'm good at. That's my strong suit. That's why I like autofocus. I get to cross those things off. I definitely use I use bullet journaling in my planner, and I don't migrate each day, and I limit myself to a short amount of tasks each day. Mm-hmm. But I have a week of the view spread, so the next week, if I don't have everything finished, then I migrate it to the next week. And there is something about that repetition of looking at it and writing it every day or every week that you're like, okay, I should probably maybe get on that, because I've written this down for 3 weeks in a row. And maybe it's time to do that thing, whatever that thing might be. And that works well for me too. It's like a nagging system.
I've found that the Kanban system works a lot better than the rhythm method.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm done with this podcast right now.
So now I use the Kanban system at work. I work with a bunch of developers. We actually have 5 steps, I believe, where we have kind of this needs to be done, this is being done, okay, this is ready for review, this is in review, and then this has been reviewed and it's good. Mm-hmm. And so, because we've got a whole QA department who tests all the code after we write it, and the thing about the Kanban system is that it is kind of flexible, and you can set up as few or as many lanes as you need, and work your restrictions out as you need them.
Yeah, with both of these systems that I talked about today, I kind of explained the simplest version of it, and you can really develop them to be as specific as you need them to be.
this is actually really pertinent to my life right now. I was actually just talking to Sarah about it this afternoon because I'm getting to a point where I've got so much going on in my life where I'm starting to have to really like schedule my downtime. And it's a weird feeling to schedule your downtime.
Mm-hmm.
Very important, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I do the same because, like I said, I have a ton of hobbies, and you know, those things. I think those things that you enjoy need to go in some sort of. Don't just make your planner or bullet journal or stuff all about the stuff you have to do, the stuff that's not necessarily fun. Put fun stuff in it. Make sure you make time for that, and get to mark those off too. That's, marking off the easy stuff's fun too. We were talking about Facebook groups earlier and a way to have that virtual connection. I'm part of a bullet journal Facebook group. So you can see all kinds of ideas about how people have really complicated it. It is supposed to be a really simple system, but people will always take it and change it up any system to make it work better for them. And some people keep it simple, and some people definitely make it more complex because that's what works for them. And I think it's really interesting to see how people lay it out. And I take ideas from stuff from time to time and implement it. I think it's really neat to have that kind of community. It's so neat the age that we live in, and have that kind of community just there for you to learn from, and YouTube videos to learn about the bullet system from.
Yeah.
Sarah, pick of the week.
She already did hers.
I already did it.
What was yours?
The DM screen. It's BoingBoing DM screen. Journaling.
Your character in a CD case. That's your brilliant idea. You
Oh,
had a while
okay.
ago. That actually was her
part of Sarah's.
Yeah.
Okay.
To summarize, BoingBoing DM screen, journaling, battle axes.
Yeah, battle axe.
We're well rounded.
Well, so that's our picks of the week.
BoingBoing battle axe.
There's a name for a game.
Or my next superhero in icons.
There you go. That would be a good superhero name. BoingBoing Battle Axe.
BoingBoing Battle Axe. Well, that sounds like probably the best ending we could ever have hoped for. So thank you so much for listening. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another episode, but until then, join a geek group, go watch some YouTube videos and have all kinds of fun just being a geek. Bye.
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 Geek groups or geeky groups, either one, it doesn't matter.
Geeky group.
Geek groups. Geek groups.
Geek group.
Geek groups.
Geek groups.
Rhymes with bleep bloops.
If you say it enough, it sounds like nothing.